Sun dipped low over Willow Creek, casting an amber glow that shimmered against the crumbling storefronts, each one a testament to a bygone era. Dust rose in lazy swirls as the wind whispered through the empty streets, where laughter once danced under the blue sky. Now a heavy silence enveloped the town, the vibrant pulse of life replaced by an eerie stillness that felt all too heavy. George Strait parked his tour bus at the entrance of the old community center, a faded sign hanging crookedly above the door. Today was meant to be a beacon of hope, a charity event designed to uplift the spirits of those who had lost sight of brighter days. Yet as he stepped outside, an unsettling mix of excitement and dread twisted in his stomach. The familiar roar of the crowd was conspicuously absent. Instead, a handful of townspeople lingered at a distance, exchanging uneasy glances and hushed words. Their faces were etched with lines of worry, the kind that spoke of struggles and uncertainty. As he adjusted the collar of his well-worn denim jacket, George took a moment to absorb the atmosphere. It was as if the town itself held its breath, waiting for something, anything to change. He sensed the discomfort in the air, a collective unease that struck a chord deep within him, an unwelcome reminder of his own moments of doubt. Amidst the stillness, something caught his eye. A scruffy dog emerged from a narrow alleyway, a creature born of neglect and hardship. Rusty, with matted fur and sunken eyes, wandered cautiously between the buildings. His thin frame spoke volumes of hunger and fear. George's heart tightened as he watched the animal. There in the waning light, Rusty stopped, glancing around, as if searching for a hint of safety in a world that had turned its back on him. "Hey there, buddy," George called softly, kneeling to bridge the gap between them. The dog hesitated, his body tense with uncertainty, yet the flicker of hope in his eyes was unmistakable. George sensed an immediate bond, one forged in the unspoken understanding of loneliness. "You look like you could use a friend." Rusty inched closer, drawn in by the gentleness of George's voice. With the sun casting a warm halo around them, George reached into his pocket, pulling out a small piece of his lunch. He extended his hand, palm open, offering the morsel. Rusty sniffed cautiously, then darted back, avoiding contact. The fear that clung to the dog was palpable, echoing George's own childhood memories of loss, his beloved pet, who had been a victim of indifference, a cycle no living being should endure. As Rusty turned and vanished into the shadows of the alley, an unsettled knot formed in George's chest. He felt the weight of an emerging awareness balance precariously between him and the townsfolk. Was this not their breaking point? The moment when they could choose to show compassion instead of turning away? With resolve igniting within him, George stood, tracking the last flicker of Rusty's presence. He turned toward the community center, determination coursing through him, a determination not only to perform, but to rekindle the spirit of this town, to remind its residents that kindness could rewrite their stories. Yet, as he prepared to face the crowd, the memory of Rusty's sad, watchful eyes lingered in his mind. That moment was just the beginning, a quiet echo of change waiting to bloom in the heart of Willow Creek, where even a simple act of compassion could ignite a fire of hope amidst the indifference. As the last rays of sunlight flickered across the horizon, George Strait stepped inside the community center, the musty scent of old wood and dusty memories filling the air. The hall was sparsely decorated with faded banners announcing past events, each a reminder of the vibrancy that once pulsed through Willow Creek. Chairs, once filled with laughter and chatter, now stood in quiet rows, waiting for an audience that seemed elusive. With his heart heavy, George made his way to the stage, the wooden floor creaking gently beneath his boots. He glanced at the empty seats, wondering how they had become so silent, so indifferent. But deep within, a memory began to surface, an echo from his childhood. His family gathered around the old radio, voices harmonizing in sync, flanked by the soft warmth of loving arms. In those moments, music had been a language of love. His mother's laughter would intertwine with the sweet melodies, creating an atmosphere that wrapped around him like a warm blanket. But there, too, was the shadow of loss. He remembered the day they lost his dog, a spirited little ball of fur named Max, right when they needed him most. George had been just a boy, alone in his grief, struggling to understand why the world had to be so cruel. The ache of that void, never fully dissolved, instilling in him a compassion for those who suffered without the shelter of love. As he tuned his guitar, the instrument felt both familiar and foreign, like a bridge connecting his past to the present. He He strummed the strings gently, each note resonating with the longing for connection, for healing. Here, in the silence of the empty hall, he could almost hear his mother's voice guiding him back, urging him to remember the importance of not just feeling but acting on that empathy. Meanwhile, the image of Rusty flashed in his mind, the dog's hollow stare, the way it mirrored the loss he once felt. He had witnessed too many animals abandoned like forgotten toys, left to wander the streets as they desperately sought kindness. And in Willow Creek, there were too many people living their own versions of that despair, shunning sunlight for shadows, turning away from potential connections. Across town, Rusty roamed the streets, a ghost of what he once had. He was once a beloved companion, cherished and cared for. A family would have welcomed him home, offered him the warmth of companionship, but that life became a distant memory when neglect replaced love. He wandered alone, scavenging for scraps behind diners, the warmth of human kindness, a fading dream. In flashes of memory, Rusty recalled the sound of laughter, the caress of a child's hand, and the soft murmur of comfort in his ear. But each year that passed was another reminder of abandonment, each empty bowl a mark of indifference. Yet, even in his darkest moments, hope flickered. Perhaps today would bring a change. The sharp scent of opportunity hung in the air, intoxicating in its promise. As George took the stage, his heart swelled with purpose. He glanced at the crowd forming slowly. Familiar faces began to appear, some hesitant, others curious. He cleared his throat, drawing more attention, stealing brief glances at the dog who had sparked a flicker of change deep within him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice rich and warm echoing off the walls. "This town holds a special place in my heart, and I want to share that love with those who need it the most, just like Rusty, who I met earlier today." He paused, catching a glimpse of quiet interest as he spoke the dog's name. "We've all felt the sting of loneliness in our lives, haven't we?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and George continued, "It's easy to turn away or close ourselves off, especially when we're afraid of getting hurt. But what if we chose to do something different? What if we opened our hearts and turned our fears into acts of kindness?" He played a gentle melody, letting the music swell around him. Each note was a reminder of the connection they could share, a connection that had the power to heal both the human spirit and the souls of the forgotten. As Rusty listened from his usual spot behind a dumpster, the sound wrapped around him like a comforting embrace. Though he remained at a distance, hope welled up within him, a blossoming reminder that he, too, could feel valued and loved. George closed his eyes as he played, allowing the notes to flow through him. Each strum was a call to action, a bridge linking the memories of his cherished childhood and the potential for change in the hearts of the townspeople. If he could reach just one person, maybe, just maybe, Rusty would find the love and warmth he had been seeking. As the last chord faded, George opened his eyes, locking gazes with the audience. Let's not let indifference shroud us in darkness. Let's give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves, be it a scared little dog searching for a friend, or any of us yearning for connection. Together, we can turn Willow Creek back into a place of love and hope, and it begins tonight. The room filled with applause, a sound that enveloped George in warmth. Yet beneath the clamor, a quiet stirring began to bloom, a recognition that change was possible with a single act of kindness, igniting a sense of community once buried beneath layers of neglect. The applause gradually subsided, leaving a lingering echo in the community center, a fragile thread of hope woven into the fabric of the room. George looked out, his gaze resting on the townspeople who filled the chairs, their expressions shifting from indifference to curiosity, even compassion. It was a powerful moment, but beneath their tentative smiles lay the heavy shadows of their realities, unexplored and unspoken. Outside, the day had descended into dusk. Rusty, still crouched in the alleyway, watched the warm glow of light spilling from the community center's windows. The strums of George's guitar had faded, yet something alive stirred in him, a spark igniting a flicker of hope amidst the flickering streetlights. He felt the hunger in his belly but craved more than just food. He craved connection, a light amid his cold, lonely existence. Inside the hall, George stepped down from the stage, propelled by a need to reach out. He moved through the crowd like a river coursing through a canyon, gaining strength as he went. He spotted Elder Juan, a town fixture and keeper of stories, his wise eyes gleaming with unshed tears. "Juan?" George said, resting a hand on the older man's shoulder. You've seen how this place functioned when it thrived. How do we bring back that spirit? Juan stroked his mustache thoughtfully. It starts with caring, hijo. But apathy has grown roots in our hearts, and like weeds, they choke the life from our community. What you've done tonight is important, sowing seeds of compassion. He gestured towards the now empty stage, pride illuminating his face. But those seeds must be watered. We need action. George nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. There was so much to do. Renewal wouldn't happen overnight, but the seeds had been planted. Just then, he noticed Maria standing near the back, her brow furrowed with contemplation. He approached her, sensing her internal conflict. "Maria," he began gently, "I noticed you listening closely. What do you think? Can we rally the town together?" There was a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, and she sighed deeply. "I've been indifferent for too long, George. I've seen the suffering around me, the animals, the people, but it's easier to look away. I don't know if I'm strong enough to lead a change." "Every journey begins with a single step," George encouraged softly, his tone full of genuine understanding. "You showed a spark tonight by being here. Don't undervalue that. We need each other to create change." Maria held his gaze, searching for assurance. "What if I fail? What if the town doesn't care?" "Then we keep trying," he replied, his voice firm. "We don't give up, Maria. You can be the voice for change. Together we can turn this apathy into action." As they spoke, the flickering shadows of doubt began to dissolve within her. George's earnestness sparked a flicker of hope. Maybe she could become an advocate, not only for the animals but for the community as a whole. Meanwhile, outside the light of the community center, Rusty felt the pangs of hunger gnawing at him. He watched as the shadows lengthened with the approaching night. The darkness seemed to creep into every corner of the town, wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket. Fear tightened its hold, caution stalling his steps. The streets felt too harsh, too full of lonely souls who had turned their backs on one another. He wandered, seeking warmth from the familiar scents wafting from the diner nearby. The sun had set, and the hopelessness of his search engulfed him like the night sky. Rusty peeked through the glass, seeing patrons ignore his presence as they savored meals and laughter. Disappointment washed over him. He couldn't help but feel like a ghost, unnoticed and unrecognized, a mere shadow of what once was. Then he saw George and Maria leaving the community center, their silhouettes illuminated by the porch light. Rusty's heart raced. There was a gentle aura surrounding them, a flicker of understanding, acceptance, and perhaps the possibility of aid. Yet he remained rooted in place, an instinctual fear keeping him at bay. "Come on," Maria said as they approached the diner. "Let's get some food and talk about how we can help them." George nodded, gratitude blooming as their mission shifted from shared concerns to potential action. Yet, as they entered the diner, Rusty felt a pang of despair as they closed the door behind them. Would they really care for him, or any of the strays wandering about? Would their kindness extend beyond the insulated warmth of the community center? As he lay curled in a corner of the alley, Rusty closed his eyes, surrendering to the weight of his loneliness. The world was vast, yet so full of isolation. He longed for connection but feared the rejection that had shaped his existence. People were often opaque, seemingly indifferent to the struggles of those like him. Still, in that moment of vulnerability amidst the shadows, Rusty vowed silently to keep hoping. Perhaps deep inside, he sensed that change was indeed possible, ignited by a song sung from the heart, a movement sparked by compassion. If he could hold on to that flicker of hope for just a moment longer, he might find the warmth he had been missing. The warmth of the diner was palpable, wrapping George and Maria in its embrace as they entered. The familiar sound of clinking dishes, soft laughter and bustling voices welcomed them like an old friend. Far from the somber reality outside, here the world felt alive, yet George was keenly aware of the silent battles waged beyond these walls. They found a booth near the back, and George gestured for the waitress. As she approached, he ordered coffee and 2 slices of pie, hoping for something sweet amidst the lingering bitterness of the day. Maria held her menu tightly, her eyes flicking over the diners. I can't shake the feeling that we're missing something," she confessed. "Change needs to be more than just talk. It has to come from the heart." "Exactly," George replied, his brows furrowed as he leaned in closer. "And that starts with opening our hearts to those around us. It's about recognizing that every being, human or animal, deserves compassion. He took a moment to let that sink in. We can organize food drives and we can set up rescue efforts for the strays, drop off bins for supplies at the community center. We could even partner with local businesses. The words flowed like the stream of a melody finally set free. Maria nodded, her earlier doubts beginning to recede. You're right, it's just, I felt so small in the face of all that's wrong, but maybe being part of something bigger can help. As they sat together, brainstorming ideas that could spark life back into their community, Rusty continued to watch from the shadows. The sounds of the diner echoed in his ears, mixing with the quiet dreams of warmth and safety. He couldn't deny the pull of the unfamiliar sense of hope emanating from the pair inside, but still, fear gripped him tight. A moment later, Rusty's stomach growled, its insistent protest reverberating through the alley. He hadn't eaten well for days, and the tantalizing aroma wafting through the diner was too much for him to ignore. Nervously, he padded closer, inching toward the entrance. The light from within painted his scruffy coat in soft hues, a stark contrast to the darkness he had come to know. At the booth, George and Maria shared ideas and laughter, the camaraderie between them palpable. Maria's face brightened whenever George spoke, and through their discourse she began to emerge from her shell, the tension in her shoulders easing as determination settled in. "What if we set up a community event next week?" she proposed, her spirit igniting with ambition. "We could set up booths for adoption, host fundraising activities, and create awareness about stray animals." "That's perfect," George beamed. "We'll involve schools, reach out to local newspapers. Let's get everyone on board." Their excitement filled the small space, and Rusty found his resolve wavering. Should he take the risk? Could he approach them? Would he, perhaps, find warmth in a gentle hand? He had heard whispers of kindness before, but so often those had turned into disappointment. Still, the hope ignited within him by George's music began to push against the walls he had built. As Maria continued to share ideas, pet care workshops, adoption drives, and donations, George held her gaze, recognition sparkling in his eyes. "These aren't just ideas, Maria. They're steps toward action. We used to care about each other in this town. It's time we remembered what it feels like to support and uplift one another." Outside, Rusty took a tentative step, holding his breath. There's something in their warmth, he thought. Is it worth the risk? The switch from forgotten wanderer to cherished companion felt monumental, but maybe this could be the pivotal moment in a long-forgotten tale, the point where he too could belong. Finally, drawing on every ounce of courage, Rusty stepped fully into the light of the diner. He emerged on the threshold as the door chimed gently, startling some diners but capturing George and Maria's attention. They both turned, momentarily taken aback by the figure standing at the entrance. George's breath caught. In those harrowing eyes he recognized the despair he had strummed a melody for earlier in the evening. "Hey there, come on in," George called, his voice warm and inviting. "Are you hungry?" Rusty hesitated, fear mixing with an unfamiliar thrill. But in the softness of George's demeanor, a flicker of understanding eased his anxieties. He stepped inside further, every instinct screaming at him to flee, but hope grounded him. As he approached the booth and the humans smiling at him, something began to melt within. "I'm Rusty," he managed, his voice raspy and filled with uncertainty. He stood just outside their table, his body tense, unsure if kindness was genuine. They had no reason to be nice to him. He was just a stray dog. Maria's eyes widened, and she knelt, her body open and welcoming. "Hey there, Rusty. What a handsome name. Are you looking for a friend?" Her gentle tone wrapped around him like a warm quilt. George chimed in. "Let's get you some food. You look like you need a good meal." Tentatively, Rusty shuffled closer, inching toward the table as Maria reached out, hand extended gently. He could feel the warmth radiating from her fingertips. It was an invitation, an act that held no judgment, only intent to understand. Rusty, caught up in the moment, felt vulnerability wash over him, forcing him to sink into that gentle embrace. The waitress arrived holding a bowl of steaming food, and as Rusty turned toward her, his heart raced. Genuine kindness, just as promised. He watched her place it on the floor, and before he could fully comprehend, he took his first tentative bite, savoring the unfamiliar flavors that filled his senses. George and Maria exchanged soft looks, smiles bursting forth as they witnessed the transformation of this once-lost creature. Rusty felt a shift occur in the air. A rebirth not only for him, but for the hope embodied in the three of them. A small act that heralded change. As they shared moments filled with warmth as simple as shared meals, George knew this marked the start of something profound. Again and again, kindness would weave through the fabric of their lives until they became an inseparable tapestry. This diner, this chance encounter, would serve as the birthplace of a renewed Willow Creek, where connection would once more thrive. A harmony revived under the watchful glow of promise. With every bite, every laugh, every gesture of kindness exchanged, Rusty felt the radiant warmth of belonging bud anew in his heart, and in that moment he embraced the possibility of being loved, just as he was. The diner buzzed with the comforting sounds of clinking silverware and soft laughter, creating an oasis of warmth that surrounded George, Maria, and Rusty. Each bite Rusty took seemed to melt away the layers of neglect that had built up around him. The trepidation that once gripped him began to loosen its hold, replaced by an unfamiliar sense of belonging. As they shared bites of pie and soft chatter, something special began to blossom between them, a connection forged in kindness and understanding. George observed the ease with which Maria interacted with Rusty, her laughter brightening with each joyful wag of the dog's tail. These were not just small smiles exchanged, they were bridges that linked their lives, pulling them closer together in a shared experience. "Look at him go!" Maria exclaimed, her eyes sparkling as Rusty dug into the meal. "He's like a whole new dog already." George nodded, a smile breaking across his face. "You know, Rusty, it's amazing what a little kindness can do," he said, leaning forward, his tone earnest. "You remind me that change often starts small. It can spark a fire in our hearts." At that, Rusty paused, lifting his head to meet George's gaze. The understanding in those eyes resonated deep within him. It was true. He felt different, and so, perhaps, could the rest of Willow Creek. Maybe the painful past could be laid to rest. As the evening wore on, their conversations swirled around the possibilities ahead. The ideas from earlier were now taking shape in delicious detail. Together, they began to draw a map of what the community event could look like. A pet adoption day, a raffle to collect donations, local businesses participating. There was energy crackling among them, burgeoning excitement that made the melting snow on the rooftop gutters drip like spring was finally coming. "Let's call the local radio station and get an announcement out there," George suggested, his mind racing with possibilities. "We can even host an open mic night for anyone who wants to share stories about their pets or their experiences with love and kindness in this town." "Yes!" Maria's enthusiasm was contagious. "We can create an art wall, too. People can contribute by painting or drawing what kindness means to them." Rusty listened intently, his heart swelling. He wanted to share his story, too, the struggles, the lonely nights, and the quiet hope that had kept him moving forward. Perhaps his journey was integral to this rebirth, a reminder to others that love could be found even in the darkest corners. The waitress returned, a knowing smile on her face as she witnessed the lively table. "You folks are full of good energy tonight. What's cooking?" George chuckled, leaning back as he took a sip of coffee. "Change, I think. We're planning a community event to help bring back some love and support around here." The waitress paused, her eyes lighting up. "That sounds wonderful. I'd love to help out. I'll bring it to my manager. We can donate food or set up a donation box. This town needs a little love." "See, it's already taking shape," Maria exclaimed, clasping her hands together in excitement. A spontaneous round of laughter passed between them as the waitress hurried off to spread the word, and the three continued dreaming of their blossoming project. But just as hope bubbled up within Rusty, a nagging voice inside him whispered warnings. What if it all fell apart? What if the kindness they extended didn't reach others the way it had found him? Fear crept back in, darkening the edges of his heart. He settled down, listening to the conversations rolling around him, and allowed himself a moment of doubt. Unbeknownst to George and Maria, Rusty was wrestling with shadows left from a lifetime spent dodging cruelty and indifference. Memories flooded in like a tide, unearthing the times he'd approached people only to be chased away or ignored. Had he really stepped into something new, or was this moment simply fleeting? "Rusty?" George's voice cut through the clouds of doubt swirling in Rusty's mind. "What's on your mind, buddy? You seem a little distant." With a shuddering breath, Rusty raised his gaze, meeting the gentle, understanding eyes of the two humans who had welcomed him so warmly. "I've done something like this before," he murmured, his voice cracking. "I thought I could be part of something good, but I ended up getting hurt. Sometimes I feel like maybe this is all just a dream." Maria instinctively reached out, her hand resting gently on Rusty's back, her voice soft and reassuring. "Hey, it's okay to be scared. You're not alone in this. We are all afraid sometimes, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying." "Exactly," George added, his voice steady. "Change is about stepping out of our comfort zones and facing our fears together, just like you're doing now. You're part of this, Rusty, and no matter what happens, we're here for you." In that moment, Rusty felt the weight of doubt begin to lift. Perhaps his choice to engage didn't have to be met with skepticism. Maybe, just maybe, it could blossom into something beyond his expectations. He nodded, allowing himself to believe in the warmth of their words because, after all, hope existed only when it was nurtured. With thoughts invigorated by their encouragement, the trio continued discussing ideas and plans late into the night, their laughter and joy weaving a beautiful tapestry of promise and renewal. The diner glowed with warmth, and for the first time, Rusty felt the blooms of belonging unfurl within him. As they wrapped up for the night, George pulled Rusty close, an inviting embrace that felt right. "You are a part of our family now, Rusty. Together we will change Willow Creek, for the animals, the people, and everyone who needs a little love." Rusty's heart raced at the warmth of acceptance. No longer was he a stray dog. He was a cherished companion in life's intricate dance, a transformative force destined to cradle recovery and compassion. That night marked a shift, an understanding that the bonds of kindness could rejuvenate not just his spirit, but the very heart of Willow Creek. As they walked out of the diner beneath the canopy of stars, Rusty felt lighter than he had in years. He stepped outside and inhaled deeply, the crisp night air filled with the scent of possibility. With newfound courage, he walked beside his friends, the streets ahead lit with the promise of change, a crossroad where hope blossomed eternal. As dawn broke over Willow Creek, the morning sun cast a golden hue across the sleepy town, awakening it with warmth and promise. George, Maria, and Rusty stood side by side outside the community center, ready to kick off their long-awaited first community event. The air buzzed with excitement as townspeople gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and enthusiasm. Rusty felt a whirlwind of emotions spiraling within him. He had never experienced this kind of energy before. Children tugging at their parents, eager to meet new furry friends, the aroma of freshly baked goods filling the air, wafting through laughter and informal chatter. "Look at how many people are here," George exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with delight. "I can't believe how quickly word spread." "Yes, it's more than I ever hoped for," Maria chimed in, her voice filled with excitement. "Imagine how much good we can do together today." George turned to Rusty, who sat at their feet, tail wagging anxiously but filled with eagerness. "You ready for this, buddy?" His grin was wide, an embodiment of hope and encouragement. Rusty nodded, suddenly feeling a sense of belonging. This was where he was supposed to be, among friends, part of a community celebrating kindness. With the morning buzzing around them, George took a step toward the small stage set up at the front, feeling the palpable excitement in the crowd. As he cleared his throat, the crowd quieted, anticipation hanging in the air. "Welcome, everyone," George called, his voice ringing with enthusiasm. "Today marks a fresh start for all of us in Willow Creek. We're here to celebrate kindness, connection, and the ripple effects it can create in our lives. Together we can build a community where no one feels alone." An eruption of applause greeted his words, vibrant and encouraging, igniting a fire in George's heart. Rusty looked around at the crowd, feeling a surge of hope as he realized how this gathering was more than just an event. It was a movement. Maria stepped up next to George, her confidence growing as she scanned the crowd. "Thank you all for joining us," she began, with a warmth that radiated through the audience. "Every small act of kindness counts, no matter how tiny. Rusty here," she gestured lovingly to the dog at her side, "is a living reminder that love can heal and bring us together." Rusty felt his heart swell with pride. He was no longer just that unclaimed dog. He was a symbol of the love and hope they were nurturing. With his tail wagging furiously, he watched as the crowd reacted with smiles and laughter, feeling the warmth envelop him like a cozy blanket. As the day unfolded, the atmosphere transformed into a whirlwind of laughter and joy. Booths lined the festival area, offering activities meant to bond the community, sweet treats, art stations, and opportunities for pet adoptions. George began to strum his guitar, filling the air with a melody that intertwined with the joyful chatter. His music became the backdrop for the connections blossoming all around. As Rusty mingled with the festival-goers, he couldn't help but notice a man standing on the fringes of the gathering. The man was weathered, a hint of sadness shadowing his eyes, seemingly hesitant yet drawn to the festivities. Rusty sensed a familiar loneliness and nudged George, who instantly recognized the figure. "Stay here, Rusty, I'll go talk to him," George said, moving toward the man with genuine kindness radiating from his every step. "Hey there," George greeted softly. "I'm George. I noticed you watching from the sidelines. What brings you out today?" The man hesitated, his gaze drifting to the ground. "I'm not sure I belong here. I've been feeling lost for a long time." George's heart ached for this man's hidden struggles. "It's never too late to join us," he assured him, looking into his eyes. "Everyone is welcome here. We're all about building connections." With a hint of uncertainty still visible, the man glanced toward Rusty, who had come closer, wagging his tail and looking encouraging. The warmth on the dog's face drew an almost imperceptible smile from the stranger. "Why don't you come closer?" George suggested gently, motioning toward the lively gathering. "Let's see what's happening together." Chuckling softly at the dog, who was now sniffing at him curiously, the man gave a hesitant nod and followed George further into the crowd, Rusty trotting alongside him as if guiding him home. Together, they approached the booth filled with baked goods. The smell of warm pastries engulfed them, and laughter bubbled around them, little children chasing one another, their joy infectious. Slowly, as the man absorbed the warmth and connection of the community, he began to unwind, the tension in his shoulders easing with every passing moment. George watched with satisfaction as the man started engaging with other attendees, sharing smiles and even laughter. As the afternoon continued, Rusty sensed the blossoming energy, and it invigorated him. This was not just an event, it was a place where lives intersected, where stories were shared, and where healing began. As the sun sank lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the festival, Rusty curled up at George's feet, surrounded by old friends and new faces alike. Every conversation, every shared laugh and whispered story transformed into festive heartbeats that resonated with unity and forgiveness. The man who had once stood at the fringes now shared a genuine smile with a family, cradling a muffin in one hand and a new friendship in the other. George's heart swelled at the sight, knowing this was everything they had hoped to achieve, a community embracing change. As the event wound down, Rusty realized that the love and kindness they had shared would extend far beyond that single day. It had created a ripple effect that would touch many lives, including the once lost man's whose journey had only just begun. Feeling optimistic about the future, Rusty tucked himself closer against George's leg. Here he felt more than just an animal. He felt like a burgeoning source of kindness, a living testament to the power of compassion. As the night deepened and stars twinkled in the sky, Rusty understood they had opened a door to the community's healing. Together, with love, they would ensure that hope thrived in Willow Creek, growing stronger with every shared moment, every act of kindness, and every heart willing to embrace change. As the festival began to wind down, the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over Willow Creek. Laughter and chatter filled the air, lingering like a warm embrace. George, Maria, and Rusty gathered near the community center, watching families meander home, their faces glowing with joy and connection. "Today was truly something special," George said, glancing down at Rusty, who leaned against his leg, exuding contentment. "I never expected it to bring this many people together." "It's amazing," Maria replied, her smile bright. "To see how this community has rallied, it feels like we've lit a spark." She gestured to a nearby bench where the man who had once stood on the sidelines conversed animatedly with a group of children. Their laughter mingled with the sound of crickets, creating a soothing symphony of hope. George felt a swell of pride as he observed this transformation. That's what it's all about. He's found a connection here. "We've created a place for people to come together." Rusty's ears perked up at the mention of the man's journey, and he nudged George's hand, eager to join the conversation. Maria took note of the man and suggested, "Let's invite him over." We shouldn't let him slip away now that he's found his place. With determination, George nodded and began walking toward the man, Rusty trotting eagerly beside him. "Hey there," George called out, approaching with a friendly smile. "I'm glad to see you joining in. How are you finding it?" The man looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes before he relaxed into a smile. "It's been remarkable. I didn't think I'd enjoy it so much," he admitted, glancing at the children who beamed up at him full of admiration. "That's what we aim for," George replied warmly. "Come join us before everyone heads home. We'd love to keep chatting." The man hesitated briefly, then nodded, rising to his feet. Hesitation lingered in his posture, but Rusty boldly approached him, tail wagging in encouragement, instinctively bridging the gap between strangers and friends. Once they were all settled, George asked, "So, what brought you to Willow Creek?" The man took a deep breath and began to open up. "I've been searching for something, something to pull me out of a dark place I've been in for too long. I've missed feeling connected." "Today was a step toward healing," George nodded, his heart resonating with the man's honesty. "You've got a community right here, and we're all in this together." Around them, people began dancing under the soft glow of string lights, a celebration of the day's success. The man's gaze softened as he witnessed the closeness of those around him. Rusty leaned against the man's leg, sensing his vulnerability. The warmth emanating from the dog drew a gentle smile to the man's face. "I didn't realize how much I needed this," he said, feeling the layers of isolation begin to peel away. "Kindness has a way of wrapping around us," Maria added with compassion. "Today was just a glimpse of the support you can find here. Your journey matters, and so do you." As they conversed, the man's laughter mingled with theirs, forming bonds that started to solidify under the starlit sky. It was a moment of raw humanity, filled with shared vulnerabilities and hopes, the anticipation of what lay ahead. Looking out at the community, George felt an unwavering sense of hope blooming. "This is only the beginning," he said, his voice steady. "Together, we'll continue to lift each other up." Rusty's heart swelled. In this newfound family, he understood that kindness would echo far beyond this evening. Today they had opened doors for each other, creating pathways to healing and friendship. As darkness enveloped them, George gazed at the stars, each one a flicker of hope shining brightly in the sky. With Rusty curled at his feet, he felt a profound sense of purpose. Their journey wasn't just about healing animals or connecting people through events. It was about building a home filled with love and compassion. "Let's promise to keep this going," George said, looking at the man and Maria. "Let's create spaces where everyone feels they belong." With hearts united, they shared a collective understanding. No one would stand alone in Willow Creek. The community would continue to nurture love, breaking down walls and building bridges. This hope glimmered eternal, ever-growing, a vibrant testament to the transformative power of kindness and the bonds they had forged together.